Shabbat Shalom from the Remnant of the House of Israel. Hebron ben Bilal coming back at you with another Sabbath lesson or just talking in general. This week, as you can see, we'll be talking about high value men. And I know a lot of you are saying, Hebron, this is not something that we probably should be talking about on the Sabbath. But actually it is, because not only is this something that's going wild in social circles, but it also is a part of the feministic movement, and it is taking, the feministic movement is actually taking root in a lot of Hebraic communities, and I'm starting to see this. It is already prevalent throughout the church. But before we jump into this topic, let me say we have at the Remnant of the House of Israel. If you haven't already, man, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. We also have a presence on Facebook, I believe. Yeah, we have a Facebook presence. Send us a friend request. We're going to vet you. If you meet those specifications, then we will allow you to jump on board there. We have other information, lessons, and things of that nature. We also have another page where we talk about social issues, social commentaries. It's called the Backyard Chronicles, something that I specialize in. I'm going to start putting out a lot more content on there because I'm doing a lot of watching of YouTube, different YouTube channels and stuff like that. Because I kind of want to be ahead of the curve on these things, on these topics, because they have the tendency to take root in Hebraic communities, take root in a lot of the minds of individuals who watch it. And this is why Hebrews are commanded in Torah not to follow after or to inquire about the ways of those who do not follow Torah. But a lot of us violate that, and we jump on board to these things. And that's another subject for a different time, which I will address. A lot of sisters who I'm seeing on YouTube who are jumping onto this whole feministic, gravitating and grabbing onto this feministic mindset, and are trying to impose it on different Hebraic communities. So without further ado, let's jump into this whole high value man thing that's taking root and is just on fire right now. So in accordance to this social construct, the high value man is someone who makes six figures. They don't talk about morality. They don't talk about any of that, ethics, nothing. That women, basically black women, are looking for what is known as high value men. Once again, they don't talk about the values, the principles. They just, as long as he's making a certain amount of money, they'll deal with whatever else comes with it. As long as he can match, the ones who have, who are making six figures, as long as he can match or exceed that, that's all they're looking for, which is backwards in and of itself. But once again, the reason that I jumped on this is because when I was incarcerated, and many of you know my story, did a lot of time in the penitentiary, which I will talk about on my next video in regard to feminism. I used to hear about this thing called, it was the Boaz movement, that a lot of these church women, they would run around with t-shirts that says, I'm looking for Boaz and not your ass, stuff like that. This whole Boaz thing where women were looking for, black women were looking for their Boaz, which was ultimately just a high valued man, because if you look at Boaz scripturally, that's what he was in accordance to Hebrew culture, in accordance to being a Hebrew. That's what Boaz would have been. He would have been a high value person. So I'm going to come out of the book of Ruth and give you my 2 cents in regard to how these black women have it wrong in regard to their mindset, their ideologies, their opinions, because that's all it is, and most of their opinions are wrong. In regard to body count, how you catch a high value man, the things that you need to do. And I'm just going to use Ruth once again because, like I said before, this is one of the things that was being used in the church when I was incarcerated, and this movement was heavy. That you wanted your Boaz. You wanted that high value man who would give and take care of you, and this is what you were looking for. But you didn't meet the requirements of being a Ruth. And that's what's important here. to understand is that a lot of you women are looking for these high value or these high quality or Boazes, but you're not qualified because you have to look at the characteristics of Ruth and what Ruth was, what she did, and all the things that she put into it contradicts and is completely and totally contrary to the message that you guys are putting out. Now, before I go into this, first and foremost, first thing I want to say is because a lot of you are going to say, well, how are you even qualified to speak on the behalf of high value men? First, when I was in the streets, I was making way more than six figures. So that's first and foremost. I would have been qualified as one who was probably above a high valued man. So I understand about what goes into being a high value man, whether it's on a business aspect, which I'm reaching that particular plateau, not to toot my own horn, but getting ready to open my third business. So I'm getting ready to reach that plateau again where I can speak confidently regarding high value men socially. I'm being a businessman who's reaching that plateau. And from my previous life of being a street dude, making money in the streets, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, that was nothing. That was a drop in the bucket. So I can speak from that perspective as well. So I'm qualified on either side to speak as a high value man. Now, first thing we have to get understood in regard to Boaz is that Boaz was absolutely, unequivocally, he was a high value individual. He was an individual who was very rich, very influential, and owned a lot of stuff. That's first. So what I'm going to do is just periodically kind of read some things to kind of substantiate what it is that I'm talking about. But first, I want to talk about Boaz and qualify him as being a high value man and how he looked at Ruth and decided whether he was or wasn't going to accept Ruth. First, if you look at the book of Ruth is very short. And for a lot of you, I would suggest that you go back and revisit the book of Ruth, because I'm getting ready to break it down. You probably never looked at it from this particular line. I'm not about to do something that's so spiritual and so divine that you're going to look and say, oh my goodness, he gave it to us in a way that, let's tote him on our shoulders and crown him as leader. No, I'm just going to point out from the perspective of high value men and what high value men look for in a woman, to explain to you women, not only you women who are in the church, but Hebraists and those of you who are just have no religious affiliation, who are on YouTube trying to be influencers and things of this nature, where you try to condone a lot of behaviors and still believe that a man should be receptive to it. That is absolutely, it's wrong. So understand, and Ruth chapter 2, verse 1, it explains to you that Boaz is not only a man of wealth, extreme wealth, that he's a mighty man, meaning that he was highly regarded in his community. He was looked at as someone who was esteemed, was very important. He was a man of influence. Let's just read it. And it says, and Naomi, who would have been Ruth's mother-in-law, and Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth of the family. Let's just stop right there. It doesn't matter what family he was a part of, but that's important that they identify the family, because it kind of establishes that lineage. That's only important to Hebrews, but to you secular women, only thing you want to understand is what he had. Doesn't matter his line tree. Doesn't matter if he came from line of pedophile. It doesn't matter to you, because morally that doesn't matter as long as he's making six figures or better. That's what's important. That's what high value man is. Y'all never equate his upbringing, who was his people. That doesn't matter to you. So once you jump into these relationships with these high value men and they beat your head halfway in, that's your fault, because you're not measuring or weighing those particular things. You're just looking at what he has. Does he have a nice car? What is he making? Is his credit good? These are all the things that you guys hold in high regard, and that's fine. But we don't do that in Hebraic communities. We look at the family line, who he comes from, what he's connected to. All those things are investigated before we go into relationships. And I'll show you how Boaz did the same thing here. But once again, he was a mighty man of wealth. Not only was a mighty man, meaning he was very influential, he was very powerful, he had wealth. So for him to have taken on this woman, Ruth, as his wife, she had to meet certain qualifications. Now understand, even when I was in the streets, there was qualifications to women that I would really, really, really connect myself to. For instance, when I was in the streets, I got married. I divorced once I went to the penitentiary. But the woman that I connected myself to was important because a lot of people, when you're in the streets back then, I don't know about the streets now, back then, everybody that you surrounded yourself with was important. The woman that you were connected to was important. When I remember one of the things that occurred when I first got my first real heavy, and this is FYI, but I'll put it in there. When I first established my first large connection in the drug game, first very large connection, when me and him first met, because somebody else set us up. But after me and him actually met, he gave me a rundown of everything that he knew that I had been in prison. I had never even talked to this guy. He knew that I had been in prison. He did a background check on me, basically. He knew I had been in prison. He knew how long I had been in prison. He knew the individuals who had rolled on me. He knew what color car I lived in. He knew the house I lived in. He knew my wife. He knew all of that. He knew her history. These people are very serious about what they do. And I'm learning that it's much the same in the legal business field, that these people are very serious before they lay in bed with you or they affiliate themselves with you, that it's important who they connect themselves to. They do background checks on you. They want to know who your wife is. Where do you live? What are you aspiring to do? They want to know these things before they actually become intimate with you. So understanding that Boaz didn't gain this might and this name and this reputation amongst his people by being foolhardy. He had to work for that. And it took a lot of sacrifice to get to the point that he got to. He wasn't running around carousing, carousing. He was focused on his trade, his craft, and he built himself up to the point where he was comfortable. He was a mighty man of wealth, and he was a man of influence. Now, let's get to Ruth, because this is most important. Because, okay, now we established that Boaz is a high-quality man. And it's important when dealing with a high-valued man, women, it's important to understand that you as his spouse or his mate or who he chooses, your character and your history is very important. Once again, when I was in the streets, that was important. They used to look at, okay, who is he married to? Who does he affiliate himself with? Because a lot of people who have money, who have been doing this for quite some time, who is establishing the game, just are not going to sashay up to you, or everybody would have it in the streets. Everybody doesn't have it in the streets because they do background checks on you. Even in the streets, they do background checks on you. They want to know who you're married to, who you're affiliated with. But I'm going to stop beating that dead horse. And they do it in the business arena. In the business sector, they do the same thing. In legitimate business, they do the same thing. So with Ruth, let's understand Ruth's character first. The first thing, and I have my little copious notes here, my little cheat notes. So the first thing that I documented was that Ruth had value. That was the first thing. So how do we know that Ruth had value? Let's go to Ruth chapter 2, verse 11. Now, the first thing that I addressed is Ruth had value. She didn't have a high body count. She didn't have a high body count. How do we know that? Because Boaz told her that he checked her out first. Boaz is not married at this time. Let's get that understood. So with Boaz selecting her, he's going to select someone who is going to continue to help him uphold that image that people see of him. So your body count, that body count thing that you women are arguing, that matters. That matters. So a man who has something, a man that is aspiring to gain more in his life, He's not about to go get some everyday tramp who has a high body count. That is important to a man. Who you have connected yourself with is important. Let's go to what Boaz said to Ruth. If you go down to verse 11, and I just gave it to you, and Boaz answered, and it's him talking to Ruth, and said unto her, it have been fully shown to me, that they reported to him, all that you have done unto your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and your mother and the land of your nativity, and you have come unto a people which didn't know of you. So first off, he did his research or his homework in regard to this lady. He just didn't connect himself with this lady and look and say, oh man, Ruth is jumping, man. Who is that? Boy, listen, look at that. Look at them tights and all that and them yoga pants. And look, ooh, man, she got that monkey show. That's not what he did. He went and did his research. He found out and learned that she had a lot of good values, a lot of good qualities. Her character was, you could not find flaw in her character. He told her, I know about you staying with your mother-in-law and doing right by her, even after the death of your husband. And she didn't, after her husband died, she didn't go and sleep with a bunch of dudes. She didn't do any of that because those things would have been reported, because those things were not played in Israel. And we still don't play it to this day. So understand, her character was impeccable. Her resume read straight down, and he read it back to her. He said, look, your character, hey, listen, I can't even argue. You're not doing anything that would shine a light on you in an unappealing way. Now, first, understand, he just told her, I know about you because I did a background check. I ran a 50 on you. So the body count wasn't there. He said, once your husband died, you stayed with your mother-in-law. He didn't say, once your husband died, you only slept with 2-3 dudes. No, once the husband died, that's where they stopped speaking about any other men and started speaking about what she did for her mother-in-law. Ruth was, and that's I'm about to get into that, but the body count matters. What you do previously to meeting your Boaz all counts. It all counts, because he's going to run a 50 on you. He going to find out. If he goes on, and that's important, because if he connects himself to you, and then somebody who wants to do business with him investigates you and pulls up these posts that you had 2-3 years previously, you see how that would affect him in a negative light, in a negative way, that you on there pulling your leggings up, showing yourself and doing all these things count. All these things actually matter, regardless of how you want it to be. We're not dealing with your feelings and how you want it to be. We're dealing with reality. All these things count. So Boaz would have told Ruth, hey, listen, I ran a 50 on you. You're a good girl. You're a good girl. Now, he didn't just jump out there and snatch her up. He just kind of observed. The second point was Ruth was very family orientated and loyal to the old ways. She was very family orientated. You already see that Boaz would have told her about her staying with her mother-in-law. She didn't run out and get an apartment in the city so she can go kick it. No, she stayed as via the tradition, that she didn't leave that household. She stayed and she took care of, even after Naomi, for those of you who know the story, even after Naomi told her, listen, go back to your people, go back. She refused, because this is what she had come to learn. This is what she had come to know. She had come to know the Israelite customs, and she became connected with Naomi. She was no longer staying with her mother, her father. She had left them, connected herself to her husband, moved in with him and their families, and she had become connected. She was loyal to them, and she showed her loyalty by not going back, but staying with Naomi, because Naomi didn't have anybody at that time. Naomi didn't have anybody to care for her. Naomi didn't have anybody to. This was one of the things that spoke to Boaz. This is one of the things that Boaz communicated to her, hey, listen, you care for your elders. Even after the death of your husband, you continued along these lines. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Naomi didn't have anybody after your husband had died, and her other son had died, after her husband had died. But you continued to stay there, care for her. That was loyalty. And that is something that is rare in this particular generation, that loyalty aspect, caring for the elderly. Y'all shun the elders. Y'all disqualify the elders. Y'all say that the elders don't have any wisdom to give. This is what you say. Those are the old ways. They don't work anymore. How are these new ways working out for you? They're not. But once again, you'll stand on these soap boxes and scream that you want a high value man. For you church women, you scream that you want these Boazes. Remember, Boaz gonna run a background check on you. And if you don't pass that background check, your history is important. That's important. That's one of the first things he told her. She didn't do all of this just to try to find a Boaz. She did this because this was just something that was instilled in her, ingrained in her. That loyalty to those who had been there with her and traveled that road with her and taught her and helped her. She forsook everything. She threw everything away and she went with her mother-in-law and continued along those lines. So she was very orientated and she was loyal to the old ways. How do we know that she was loyal to the old ways? Before I show you how I know that she was loyal to the old ways, let's jump down to the next thing, which is that she was not argumentative. She wasn't difficult to get along with. In no particular instance did Ruth show this quality that she was independent and, give it a neck jerk and speaking back. No, actually, she asked. I'm going to give you a particular instance. So let's jump down to Ruth, the second chapter. I'm going to pull my book up. Ruth, the second chapter and the second verse. So at this particular point, Ruth would have been interested in going out and work because Naomi was of the age where she really couldn't get out and work and do too much. So Ruth was saying, hey, listen, I'm still young. I'll go out and I'll work for us. And it was the harvest time. So at harvest time, it was a lot of jobs to be had during harvest time. So she said, I'm going to take the opportunity to go out and bring us some money into the household, which is another form of showing that loyalty, that connection. And this particular thing is going to get me into grandchildren in another video. But this shows here in chapter 2, verse 2 in Ruth. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, she's speaking to her mother-in-law. This is the question that she asked. She didn't tell her what she was going to do. Hey, listen, I'm about to go do this. No, she asked her, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And this would be Naomi. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. This is her being respectful to her elders. And a lot of you have lost your way in regard to respect to your elders. And that's one of those things that a high-valued man is going to look at, that a Boaz is going to look at and say, man, she don't even respect her elders. I ain't fooling with this. Man, this woman crazy. This is something that's very important to a high-valued man. Not only how you treat your mother, how you treat your grandmother. Do you like to visit? These things are important because when a high-value man goes out to find someone to bring in to become his wife, how are you going to treat your own family? Because if you don't value your mother, how are you going to treat and establish your own family? Because these are things that your children learn from. Your children learn how to respect their mothers and fathers this is just one way, via how you treat and respect your elders. These are lessons. These are life lessons. So Boaz not going to hook up with somebody and say, shoot, I'm with that. She's an IG model, so I'm going to throw everything else out the window. She fits that billing, and I'm going to accept her just because of how she looks. It doesn't work that way. And this is why many of you are not married today, because you don't meet the qualifications that are necessary. There's standards. Dudes with money just don't jump out there and snatch anything unless he just looking to beat your back out. Now, that's dudes in the street. And a lot of time, dudes who are in business arenas, business fields, they don't do that a lot because number one, they're too busy. They're looking for someone that they can connect with, build a family, and that's the principal person, or that's the person that they go through, to relieve themselves for that stress to lay their head next to. This is why they do it. Majority of the time, they're looking for someone that they can actually trust with all confidence to leave this inheritance to, because it's important. Because if they lay down with you, they have children. This is where their inheritance goes to. But if you're one of these miscreants who is everywhere and is defiant, disobedient, hard-headed, he can't trust you with that. He can't trust that when he lays his gray head down to the grave, that you're going to do the right thing, because you're everywhere. So understand, she was one who held in high regard her elders. So let's use another particular instance, which is going to be chapter 2, verse 7. And she said, I prayed. Now, this is her speaking to Boaz, after Boaz acknowledged her about her hard work and all the things that she did. And she said, I pray. This is a question she's asking him. She's very humble. She was very respectful. I pray, let me glean and gather after the reaps amongst the sheaves. So she came and hath continued even from the morning until now. And she tarried. Oh, excuse me. Hold on. This is not her speaking to Boaz. This is one of Boaz's number one guys reporting to him what she had requested. She didn't go to her boss and say, hey, listen, I'm going to do this, that, and that. These are particles or pieces of information that Boaz is gathering, intel that he's gathering on her, that she's a hard worker. She's not a busybody. She didn't show up inappropriately dressed, not ready to put hard work in. She didn't come in leggings and a bonnet and these eyelashes with a ton of makeup and some Crocs. She came ready for work. This is not what caught Boaz's eyes. It's how she looked. It was her work ethic. Now, number one, she was very humble because she went to her boss and she said, hey, listen, can I continue and do this, and that? She didn't tell him, which most of you, that believe in this generation that you have, especially you women, that where you demand certain things. And that demanding spirit, that spirit of defiance and negativity and always raising up, bowing up against something, that argumentative thing that y'all have, that's not an attractive thing. That masculine thing that y'all got going on, that's not attractive at all. Who is attracted to that? You guys have changed the game to the point where it has become a detestable thing to men. It actually has. But you go back to Ruth, because you all speak of you one of your Boaz, you one of your high value men. This is not who Ruth was. Ruth was a person that this person of high value noticed. He wasn't married, and he noticed her when she was at work. Her work ethic, her standing out amongst her peers, her humility. So let's go down to 3 and 18. Her being humble and loyal. She was very family orientated and loyal to the old ways. She was not difficult and argumentative. 3 and 18. This is Ruth. This is Naomi telling Ruth what to do next regarding her encounter with Boaz. After basically the marriage proposal, Ruth would have gone back to Naomi and would have asked, she would have reported everything that would have occurred after Naomi had told her what to do, and we're going to get into that. She went and she said, hey, listen, this is what you do next. Everything that Ruth learned to do in regard to getting a husband came from who? Her elder, her mother-in-law. She didn't go out and try to listen to some podcast to somebody who was her same age, telling her about, giving her lip service about marriage. What does she know about marriage and having a husband, having a spouse, outside of her having a boyfriend for a bunch of years and breaking up? This is one of the more perplexing things to me, that you young ladies want a high value man, you women want a high value man, but you listen to each other. I don't get that. And like maybe 1 out of 10 of y'all actually do have a high value man. And the ones who actually do have a high value man or a husband who are telling you, communicating to you how to get a husband which will probably be a bit older in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, who are communicating to you, you're not listening to. You're listening to somebody who's sitting next to you, who's probably the same age or maybe 5 years older, telling you how to get a high value man. What type of logic, what type of sense does that make? Ruth didn't do that. She listened to Naomi because Naomi had a husband. Her husband died. She's listening to the wisdom of someone who had a husband and was with that one man all the way to his death. She didn't go out and remarry. That's one of the things that she specified to Ruth, excuse me. But this woman of wisdom, of knowledge, who carried this information, at no time did Ruth get aggravated, incensed, argumentative about this information that was being passed along to her. She took it, assimilated to it, and went and carried out the instructions to the letter, which landed her husband. So let's read this. Then said she, this would be Naomi, speaking to Ruth, sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will fall. For the man will not rest until he has finished the thing this day. So this is her advising. This is her advising Ruth. In every instance, you see Ruth going back after being given the advisement, or after everything occurred. The first place she went was to her mother-in-law. She didn't go to her best friend. She didn't go on and click on the YouTube, and I'm just being funny, facetious. She didn't go and seek out some young girl who was her same age and say, girl, boy, look, I'm gonna. No, she went to Naomi, went straight to Naomi and said, hey, this is what's going on. And Naomi sat her down and said, hey, listen, this is what you do next in regard to a man. But you guys are so quick. You young ladies are so quick to jump on YouTube. And as soon as somebody tells you this is how you get a high value man, they don't have a man. So how are they telling you how to get a high value man? You're listening to people who've never had a husband. Or if they did have a husband, they were in the relationship and it fell apart. They're single, divorced. And once again, for those who are explaining to you how to get I was listening the other day. I can't remember the podcast, but I've been watching these two since I've been home. So it's almost 4 years. I think he's a football player, and he met his wife when he was in college. I can't remember their names, and I apologize to you two. But I watched them because even though they wouldn't have taken the route that I would suggest in regard to, getting married and all that first before you enter into sexual relations, this is what they did, but they're married. They've been going strong. And I was watching a video from them the other day, and they're in their 30s now. And man, listen, when I say that I love the young lady, I love the dude because he's hilarious and he's the king of his castle, and she allows him to know at every turn. And this is going to help me to segue into this next point. She lets him know in every instance that he is the king of the castle. She doesn't cut up. I don't know what happens off the camera, but I know that the information they put out there, the image that they put out there is very positive. It's very reinforcing that it can work. They have been together since college. They were teenagers when they first got together. They're in their 30s. They're still together. They have like 3 or 4 kids together. And it's a beautiful thing to see. The image that they put out there, the information that they give. Now, if you wanted to know how to land a high value man, that's probably who you should be listening to. But see, here's the thing. You want to be so argumentative and so negative about things, and I'll get into that whole thing in another video, that you go to anything that makes you feel good. Anything that makes you feel good is what you will gravitate towards. Anything negative, anything that has that T, anything that doesn't invoke you to change. Because in order for you to gain a high value man, you're going to have to do a lot of changing. If you want to be Ruth versus Boaz, you're going to have to do a lot of changing. Because if you go and you sit up underneath one of these elder mothers, boy, they're going to pick you apart. They're going to tear you limb from limb. They're going to tell you to take them bonnets off, take them leggings off, stop running around here clucking, stop running around here being argumentative, being offended by everything. This is what they're going to tell you. You can't get a man if every time you look up, you're on YouTube taking pictures of your hoo-hoo, your butt, doing all this. No high value man wants that. Once again, you're going to find your exceptions to the rules. You will and everything. But overall, that's just not going to happen. If you're out here just calculating up this, you just running up this body count because, shoot, I don't, after I get done living, then I go. Men don't want that. Listen, let me explain something to you real briefly, and then I'm going to jump back into this. In regard to the submissiveness of Ruth and her playing her lane. When I got out of prison, this was 4 years ago. When I got out of prison, let me explain to you. First and foremost, I was already would have been qualified as a high value man. Once again, I was getting that money before I went to prison. So I was able to categorize myself as that. And once again, I had the mindset that moving into this is what I wanted to be again, but I wanted to be that on a whole different plane. I wanted to be that on a plane where they just couldn't take it away from me. And when I came home and I was watching you women, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then I started to tune into like YouTube and stuff, and I wasn't hip to YouTube. And I got home. Some people had told me about it when I was in prison, officers and stuff. So I started like pulling up videos and watching you women and the stuff that you guys were doing. And I was like, and I had told someone before, I said, I could not even see myself. I couldn't. I just couldn't. Just how you're putting yourself out there. Do you know that image is always out there? If you slept with all these dudes, that is always going to be out there. That's a strike against you coming through the door. If you got this super high body count, you're doing all this stuff on YouTube, and these visuals, once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once a man sees something, he can't unsee it. And I was thinking to myself, I would never, ever, ever entertain a relationship with any of these women because I'm seeing y'all out in bonnets and you have on these tight clothes. Everywhere you go, everything is tight. You're over-accentuating your body and you're making sure that a person doesn't miss anything in regard to your figure. And for me, a person that was just coming home from prison after almost 15 years, and wasn't excited about this by the least, should tell you a lot. It should tell you a lot because I was very turned off by just seeing you. I was like, oh, this is not only disturbing, it's disgusting. It was revolting, to be very honest. I was like, man, they are tripping out here. But let's go to really quickly about the humility and dress code. The humility and dress code. The humility of Ruth was overwhelming. You see it in a couple different instances. And this is why this one particular thing will allow you women, you modern women, to understand why you'll never, ever, ever land a Boaz is because of your level of insubordination, your level of argumentativeness. You don't want to submit. And even in the word submission, that just means being agreeable. That you're not just argumentative all the time. You're not trying to have your way all the time. You're listening. And but a lot of you don't do that. You're defiant. You're always trying to find your own way. And that doesn't work in a relationship. If you have a person pulling this way and you have a person pulling this way, this is a household going in two totally different ways. How would Ruth, after Boaz had made all this wealth and fortune, how would Ruth be able to come in and say, okay, now we're going to change the game up a little bit. We're going to do some things differently in here. Boaz would have looked at her and said, hold up. So I've been doing this for, let's just say for 20 years. And I amassed all this. I have a structure and a plan. But you're going to come in and we're going to do things different. No. You came in here. So you need to conform to what's going on in here. You came here. I didn't come to you. It's a difference. You came here. So if you come here, but he didn't have to do that. Let's look at the submission of Ruth, how humble she was and how quick she was to submit and to show the levels that she would go to of submission to Boaz. So the first place that we look to show the humility of Ruth and her gratefulness would be, let's go to Ruth, 2nd chapter, and Ruth, 2nd chapter, verse 10. Now, this is after she would have encountered Boaz, and Boaz would have explained to her what he wanted her to do, and giving her basically he upgraded her imposition. So in verse 10, this shows her humility, her gratefulness in regard to what was being done for her. This shows another part of her character, which you young ladies don't have today. And I'm going to tell you how I know that. Then she fell on her face. This would be Ruth, showing the level of humility and thankfulness, her gratitude toward Boaz for the small kindness. This is just a small kindness that he has presented to her by elevating her in status, that she no longer had to glean over here. She could glean over here, that she wouldn't be bullied, picked on because of her heritage, and that she would be looked after. And she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said unto him, why have I found grace in your eyes, that you should take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? So number one, she thanked him. She was very thankful. She showed that thankfulness by, hey, listen, let me get on my knees and thank you. I appreciate everything you're doing for me, because me and my family were kind of in a tough spot. Now, this is why he said he did it. And this is important. Once again, it goes back to your character. Running at 50. Will I invest in you? And this is even on the workplace. So in a relationship, or if you're pursuing a high value man, the first thing he's going to do is run a 50 on you. Okay, is she worth my time? Okay, she kind of fit in the bill. Because understanding, the first thing that caught his attention was not her apparel, not how she looked, but her work ethic. Because he came, when he got to the work site, he asked those individuals who were working with him, hey, who is that over there? She's working her tail off. She's doing her thing. So he told her, this is why I'm doing this for you. He said, and Boaz answered and said unto her, it has fully been shown to me, all that you have done unto your mother, I just read this to you, in law, and how you have left your father and your mother, and you came into a nativity or a land which wasn't yours, and a people that did not know you. So, understanding that, number one, once he ran that 50, and he seen that she was of good character. She ain't had no high body count. She didn't have a bunch of garbage going on in her past. She wasn't making podcasts where she was out there in tight clothes. She wasn't the IG model. She wasn't doing all that. She was a person of humility, of good character, of good report. So when all this information was gathered and given to him, he elevated her in status and position in regard to her workplace. That's first. So she showed that humility. Now, the submission aspect of it, I know a lot of you women are going to love this, to show you that first off, what Naomi told her after Naomi had decided, hey, listen, I'm getting a little bit older. You need to get married. You need another husband. You're still young. You need to have another husband. And Boaz fits that bill. And in regard to Hebrew customs, he fit the bill. So just for you ladies who are looking for a high value man, or you social women, or you Christians, Boaz fit the bill in Naomi's eyes. So she didn't go out and try to find herself a husband. Naomi was the one who said, hey, listen, this guy fits the bill. So Ruth didn't go out and try to find a bad boy, a street dude who was getting that money. You know what I'm saying? No, she allowed Ruth, who was her, Naomi, who was her elder, to explain to her the type of man that she needed. This is the type of man that you need, young lady. And this is the type of man you're going to get. Now, he's digging you. And I'm going to tell you how you land him. Once again, didn't go to social media. and type in, how do I find a man? Or how do I get a man? She went to the elders. She went to the sources she had, somebody who had experience in this area. So when she did, Naomi told her exactly what to do. This is what you do. First and foremost, there was a function going on. And I'm not going to get into the overall breakdown in the function. But remember, Ruth had been working with them for a few weeks, probably a month at this particular time, because it was harvest time. So she had already been there. So Boaz had the opportunity to watch her. She wasn't on the job flirting. She didn't have dudes chasing behind her. She was busy in herself. She stayed busy with it was, and she was focused on what it was that she needed to do. She never went and hung out in the city. And one other thing, when she got that elevation or that raise at her job, she went straight home to Naomi. She didn't stop in the city and say, girl, get my hair and nails done, I'm going out. No, she took her tail straight home and told Naomi. This is those things that are important. These are the things that are important. Understand, when men of influence and power go to these clubs, they're only looking for one thing. They're not looking for a wife when they go in those places. They're looking for one thing, period. So if you think that you're going to find you a high value man in one of these clubs and this is what it, generally, that's not how it works. Now, there are exceptions to the rules. But Naomi explained to her, she said, hey, listen, this is the next step in the courting process. Now, you've already shown the dude that you're a good young lady. You already shown him the report is good in regard to you. So the second thing that would have occurred was that she told her, check this out. Just lay back when you go to this function tonight. And after the men have done their thing, and this is important, two things. After the men have done eating and drinking, understand, they wouldn't have been mixing and mingling, rubbing all up against the men and stuff of that nature. The men would have been doing their things. The women would have been overseeing this celebration, because the harvesting was done and over with. So it was a celebration afterwards, a feast. And the men would have been drinking. They'd have been getting drunk. It would have been a celebration. All the hard work was over. The harvest was in. And it would have been a celebratory environment. First off, there wasn't dancing and they was out there twerking, trying to show what they was. No, the women were there. But the men would have been doing their thing and the women would have been in their place. There would not have been a mingling of the two. So Boaz wouldn't have been sitting over there having a drink, watching Ruth from a distance, and Ruth was over there talking to 2 or 3 different dudes. It's what you women show, and you're not understanding this. It's what you give off. If I see you doing a certain thing as a man, that visual, if I see you doing this, this is what you are. So understand, this is important. So after everything would have occurred, Naomi would have told her. And this is why I tell you, she followed Naomi's instructions step to step. And see, the reason that you young ladies, and once again, won't listen to your elders in regard to, how to get a mate, it's because it's too much work. See, you want to be out there having fun. You want to be out there doing this, and you want to be, and shoot, I want to catch me some bodies, and I want to do that, and I want to be a social media presence and all that. So you won't listen to the elders, because when the elders tell you to pull your skirt down, when the elders tell you to take them things off your, when the elders tell you to stop dressing like a whore and present yourself like, that goes against all the things that you like to do. This is what this feministic mindset has implemented, placed inside of you all, that this is what you can do with this new freedom. Do it up. And this is what you do. It's funny how you fought for this freedom, and when you got the freedom, you didn't do anything but continue to argue, continue to complain, be more hoarse than you once were, rack up more bodies and brag about it. And all you do is complain. You have freedom. Why are you complaining? What are you complaining for? You asked for this freedom. You got it. Now you're turning around arguing at men telling men what they're not doing. Oh, you need to join us. It don't matter if we catching bodies and all this. You join us and accept it and appreciate it. No, you can't make us go against our moral compass and say, it ain't right. But you want us to attach ourselves to it, embrace it. Nah, no, men don't want anything to do with that. But back to the point. So the number one thing, one of the number one things that, one of the number one things that Naomi would have told Ruth, and I'm going to read it to you. And a lot of you are going to say, oh, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. So she told her, after the men have gotten drunk, they're chilling, they're kicked back, you go to him. And not only do you go to him and you lay at his feet. Not get in there and rub on his back and try to molest him and try to get him to hit you. She didn't say any of that. She said you lay at his feet. You lay at his feet. That's a position of submission. I'm submitting to you. Not only am I submitting to you, I'm putting my application in. Can you imagine how many times Boaz has rolled over and had this done to him? Because the man had paper and he was single. So this particular time when he was drunk and he felt somebody at his feet, he said, hey man, who is that? And she told her, hey, listen, this is Ruth, your servant. Pretty much what do I? And he said, okay, look, I'm going to tell you what to do now. I'm going to tell you what to do next. And he informed her what to do next. Now, once again, there was no defiance. She didn't try to snuggle up to him, let him hit so he could take it for a test run, see if he liked it. None of that even played a part in it. The whole sexuality part didn't even play a part in it. It was the submission that she showed. Number one, she already had a good background check. Number two, she showed herself worthy because she showed up to work every day, putting in that work, doing exactly what she was told. She was humble. She was grateful. She was thankful. She had all the great qualities and characteristics that was necessary to land this Boaz, to land this high quality person. She did things without complaint. She listened to the elders. It reflected by Boaz looking and saying, yeah, she's doing everything Naomi's telling her. And the reason it was reflective of that, because remember, she was a Moabite. She wouldn't have known about Israelite culture and tradition. So she had to be guided. And this was important in Boaz's eyes for him to say, yeah, let me tell you something. I used to tell young men when I was incarcerated, I could always tell the young men who were raised by men, who had a man in their household, because they always say, yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, excuse me. Those things were instilled in them by a man. So I appreciated those young men more. And everyone around us did. And I've told you this before, where as you can tell when a young man was in a household who did not have a man in the household, because he just kind of, willy-nilly bounced about. There was no thank you, excuse me, no sir, yes sir. There was nothing there. There was no substance to him. He didn't understand about manners. He didn't understand about etiquette. He didn't understand about values. He didn't understand about those things. And you could always tell that they were raised by women, because women do not understand these things. They're defiant. Well, this society's women are defiant. They rebel and buck against everything that has any structure to it, and they create their own construct, and that's what they go by. So understanding here that the number one thing and in the proposal process in this particular instance was her showing this humility to this man by laying at her feet. This was important because it showed that submission to him, that I'm submitting to you. So when he rolled over and he said, hey, man, who's at my feet? And like I said, once again, this was a rich dude who wasn't married. So you can imagine how many times he rolled over after having a celebration, and it was a woman at his feet. They weren't snuggling up to him and trying to provoke him, walking in half naked. There was processes, procedures, and the elders taught the younger women what the processes were. This is why most of y'all can't get a man. This is why most of y'all got 2 and 3 kids by 2 and 3 different dudes, because you're listening to people that are your same age or maybe a tick older telling you how you should be, how you should feel about the old ways. But if you want a Boaz, if you want a high value man, it's right here. You have to have a certain qualification. You do devalue. After men run up in you, after you got a line of dudes and I can track them, you become devalued. You're not as, and I'm going to show you how valuable Ruth was to this rich man. How valuable. So she listened, she learned, she followed orders. Now, let me show you what Naomi told her next. After everything had occurred, she went back to Naomi. And she reported everything to Naomi. And she said, hey, Naomi said, how'd it go? And Ruth reported it. Once again, she didn't stop by her friend's house and tell her friend first. She took it straight to Naomi. And she told Naomi. This is what Naomi told her. Then said she, Naomi, to Ruth, sit still, which a lot of you women don't understand today. The art of sitting your behind down and staying the hell out of the way so the man can continue to do what a man is supposed to do. You want to run straight over there and you want to try to tell a man how to be a man. She said, Naomi said to Ruth, sit still. Sit your behind down, my daughter, until you know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he has finished this thing this day. Okay, first off, Ruth did not jump her behind up and run down to where Boaz was getting ready to be and interject anything. She stayed in her position. And this is one thing that you can believe it or not. You better ask the men. This is what men, especially men who have worked to get to where they are in life, what you call high value men, hate the most. They hate a contentious, nosy, and excuse my language, ass woman. They hate it more than anyway. Get in your lane as a woman and play your position. That's what Naomi just told her. Listen, you want to know how to win this part? Stay out the way. Stay out the way. Let him do what he has to do as a man, because he's not going to rest until this matter is done. Stay in your lane right now. No. Don't go up to the city gate. That don't have nothing to do with you. As a woman, you are not supposed to be up there. And I know a lot of you women listen to this. See, that's that toxic masculinity. Okay, that's fine. That's probably why you'll never get a Boaz, because you always want to be in a different lane. Get in your lane as a woman. And this is what she's telling her. Listen, stay in your lane for right now. Sit still. Sit down. Sit down and let him handle his business. He got you. Sit down and let him handle you. But y'all are so, you want to get on social media, blast this, blast that, cancel this, cancel that. You're like, you know what y'all remind me of? Y'all remind me of hyenas. If you ever pulled up a video of hyenas, right? Now, number one, hyenas are the only animal in nature where the woman or the female leads the pack. And if you ever notice with hyenas, it's just mass confusion. It's just running around and just snapping. And what they'll do is they'll bite and eat and bite and snap at each other. They won't eat. They'll probably eat each other. I don't know. I've never seen it. But they'll bite and snap at each other until they find somebody to go out and bite and snap at. And this is much like y'all. Y'all don't know how to sit down and let a man be a man. Y'all are so busy trying to tell a man, y'all like hyenas. And when I see y'all, I say, man, these people are completely and totally out of control. What the hell is going on over there? And I watch y'all, and I watch, and the first thing that comes to me is hyenas running around. They have no direction because a woman is leading them. They're just everywhere. Just watch a hyena video. and you have a woman leading these hyenas, and you got male hyenas in there as well. So they're just everywhere. They're just scattered, just bouncing around everywhere. It's hilarious to watch. But I look at y'all and I see the same thing. Because when women lead the pack, this is what y'all sound like. You just bitch, moan, and complain about everything. Nothing is ever good enough. So when you try to get a man of any value, they look at you and say, man, I don't want no parts of that. Because you're in a part of this hyena group. It's just constant. It's just constant biting and nipping at each other and this confusion. And then when you set your sights on something, y'all go rushing at it, and all of y'all, and you're nipping at it from every side. And then y'all run off to something else, and it's just no control. There's no substance. So once again, she told her to stay in her place. Sit still. Hyenas can't sit still. So she told her, sit still. Let him handle his business. So now we get to the most important part, the value part that I spoke about. The value of a woman. So remember, Ruth didn't have a high body count. Her husband died. She stayed with her mother-in-law. She took care of her mother-in-law. She went out, made sure the house was taken care of, did all the things that her mother-in-law needed. She listened to her mother-in-law, allowed her mother-in-law to cultivate her character, lead her and guide her, tell her how to conduct herself when she was outside of her presence. She did all those things, and she listened, and she obeyed. So what happened was, and I'm going to read it to you. So what happened was Boaz had seen enough. So when Ruth had finally proposed or went and said, hey, listen, I'm on the market. What do you want to do? Boaz had already known enough about her and watched her enough where he knew that she was high value. She was qualified to be with him because, understand, as a high value man, he could not go out and connect himself to someone who was a harlot. It just wouldn't look good at all, period. And understanding he was a very prominent individual. He was a person who had might and power and influence amongst his people. So he just couldn't connect himself with anyone. This is why he was still single. Surely he's seen some women before. They was like, whew, boy, I'd like to get with her, but she doesn't fall in the category that I need her to be in. So he just didn't. But he waited for a long time. Ruth came along, and this is what happened. So what happened was that there was another person in line who was to inherit the land, in regard to which Naomi's people would have fallen under. And Ruth basically would have come at a price. In order for Boaz to marry her, he would have had to get with the person who was in Hebraic custom and culture, who was next in line to inherit the property, as well as to marry Ruth. So he used some cunning. He knew the character of the person who was next in line, who was his kinsman. And he basically kind of tricked him and played on his greed, understanding that not only are you going to have to buy this property, you're going to have to take this woman on as well. So he hadn't done it yet, which shows that, you do have unscrupulous men in Israel. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to show you the value of Ruth to a high valued man, because of the fact that she had only been in one relationship. And I hate to bring this up, she didn't have any baggage, i.e. children. She didn't have any children. She had only been with one man. That man died. She didn't divorce him. There wasn't a whole bunch of scandal behind her. He died. She came back. Only good reports followed her. And this man went and he took him in front of the elders, went to the city gate, and so he ended up having to buy. He not only had to buy her, he also had to buy the land. So it says, this is what he says. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife. So she came at a price. And I know a lot of you say, oh, well, he purchased her to be his wife. Yeah, he did. He did. When a man sees that a woman is worth something, especially if he has it, it's nothing that he won't do to gain that prize, as long as she is a prize. She was a prize to the point that not only did he buy the land, he had to actually purchase her from the other person who was in line. So he had to purchase her and he had to purchase the land. So he had to come out of pocket to marry this woman, but there was value to her. He understood that all this stuff that I had accumulated is worth planting a seed in this woman, and I will be able to have an heir, because you do understand that this is the line in which King David would have come through. They would have been King David. Ruth and Boaz would have been King David's great grandparents. So he understood the value in this woman. So there is value in a woman where a man of means will reach back and grab, even if she's not a person of, and Ruth wasn't, she was actually impoverished. She was out gleaning just to make her family, help her family make ends meet. But she qualified. She checked all the boxes, and he went and he said, I have purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon the inheritance, that the name of the dead not be cut off from amongst the brethren, and the gate of the place, you shall all witness this. So he went and he purchased her. It cost him a pretty penny. Because he had to buy the land, and he had to take on the responsibility of the Levitical lineage. I can't remember the name, but that's a Hebraic thing. But she was worth what he had to pay. So my point here today, doing this, is not only, number one, to give you something to read and study, but also to put my 2 cents in regard to this high value man argument, and whether this high value men thing, you can run out and catch a bunch of bodies, or you could do this and you do that, and a high value man still would want you. They don't. It's important because of where that man is elevated to in regard to status, who he is. It's important who he connects himself with, whether you women would like to acknowledge this or not. It's very important. He just can't go out on the corner and just because that whole Pretty Woman scenario. If you haven't seen it, Google it for you youngsters. That doesn't really happen. With high value men, a lot of things play a part in who they select as a mate. Especially with high value men who worked hard to get what they have gotten. They look towards the future. Who am I going to leave this to? Who is this inheritance going to go to? And this is why they shop around. This is why they do their due diligence before they pick a mate. So all those things, your character, all those things mean a lot. And I just wanted to use the book of Ruth today to explain my position and why I see it that way. Not only from experience, but also because of what this story entails, and a lot of people in the church using the whole Boaz Ruth thing, that they want their Boaz, and not understanding that you don't even meet the qualifications of a Ruth, because as you're out there campaigning for your Boaz, you're continuously stacking up bodies. You're leaving straight from the church, probably going straight to the hotel, getting hit by somebody. So who wants you? You're showing up in church dressed scantless. Who wants you? You're toting around 3 and 4 kids, two or three kids, even one. Now, understand, this wasn't an issue back in my day. I think the breaking point, or the point of not wanting a woman, was if she had like 3 kids, something like that. But back in my day, we understood that, the whole thing can happen where you could get with a guy, he could either die in the streets, he could go to jail, or it just didn't work out. But pretty much at that particular point, a lot of times women held themselves for whoever they want to be with next and try to get into a serious relationship. So a lot of guys didn't really mind. A lot of us didn't mind I hate to use the term baggage when it comes to children, but we didn't mind the whole baby mothers thing. But that's a thing today. So you have to understand that these high value men take that in consideration. So while you're out here running around sleeping around and you're doing all these things and you're opening your legs and you're still young and you have the opportunity to appeal to one of these high value guys and you keep opening your legs, generally when a penis is inserted in you, that's where life comes from. So if this happens, that drops your value in the eyes of this generation. In regard to this generation of high value men, and also my generation of high value men, we've kind of come around to a place where we look at it as if you have all these children, you wanted to live a certain way. Now you want to come to me and I have to take care of your baggage. And it really just doesn't work that way. Because I'm trying to start my own line where I can give this substance to my own. And that's kind of how it works. Well, not kind of, that is absolutely how it works. But anyway, I digress. I spent enough time on this topic this morning, but you can look for me to drop another piece of content in regard to this soon. Once again, Hebron ben Bilal, coming to you at the Remnant of the House of Israel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, like and subscribe to the YouTube page, the Remnant of the House of Israel. Also, you can go on to the Backyard Chronicles, where I do a lot of secular stuff, and get into that as well. So, without further ado, shalom, peace to Israel, and peace to you who are in the world and was just watching. So, have a good day. Love you, and I'll speak to y'all soon.